There was a specific moment, and I remember it clearly, where I looked at my revenue for the month and I felt genuinely good about it. Like, okay, this is working. And then I opened my bank account and I felt confused because the number there was not what I expected. And for a second, I thought I had made an error somewhere, but I hadn't. The revenue was real. The bank account was also real. They just didn't match the way I thought they would. If you've ever felt excited by your sales and then weirdly unsettled by your cash, then this episode is for you, because those two things can be true at the same time. And it doesn't mean something is wrong. It means you need to understand the difference between revenue, profit, and cash, and why they almost never move together. First, let's just define the three things, because I think a lot of people use them interchangeably and they are not the same. So revenue is what comes in when a customer pays you. Someone buys a harness for $40, that's $40 in revenue. Simple. Profit is what's left when you subtract what it costs you to make and sell that thing. So the harness cost me all in, including freight and packaging, let's say $15 to land at my door and get it to the customer. So my profit on that sale is $25. That's the number that actually matters for whether the business is sustainable. And then there's cash, which is different from both of these things, because cash is what's actually sitting in your bank account at any given moment. And cash can be low even when revenue is high, and even when you're technically profitable because of timing. And timing is the thing that trips everyone up. So here's an example of how this plays out. In the early months for Elise, I was placing production orders overseas, which means I was sending money to factories, sometimes weeks to months before those products would arrive, clear customs, and be ready to sell. And then even after they were ready to sell, there was the time it took to actually move the inventory, to get the orders in, pack them, ship them, get paid. So I might have spent $7,000 on a walk set order in March, and that money leaves my account in March, but the revenue from selling those units comes in over the next several months, April, May, June, maybe longer, depending on sell-through. That gap between when the cash goes out and when it comes back is what's called cash timing. And it means you can have healthy sales and feel completely cash-strapped at the same time. Not because you're losing money, but because your money is living temporarily inside your inventory. That's a really important distinction, and it's one that I had to internalize pretty quickly. And then there's another layer to this that I want to talk about, which is the difference between revenue and what I actually keep. When a customer pays me $40 for a harness on Shopify, that's not $40 in my pocket. Shopify takes a transaction fee and the payment processor takes a cut, and if I ran any kind of discount or promotion, that comes out too. And then there's the cost of actually getting the order to the customer, the shipping label, the packaging materials, and then there's a proportional share of all of my fixed costs, the software subscriptions, the business filings, the operational overhead. So by the time you account for all of that, the number that's actually left over from a $40 sale is meaningfully smaller than $40. And that's fine, that's normal, but you have to know that number going into it, because if you're building your confidence off of the revenue line and not looking at what's underneath it, you're going to make decisions based off of information that isn't really telling you what you think it is. So what do I actually look at instead? The number that I care most about on a per product basis is contribution margin, which is basically what do I make on this item after all the variable costs, the cost to make it, to ship it to me, to get it to the customer. That's the number that tells me whether a product is worth selling. And then at the business level, what I want to understand is my cash position healthy enough to fund the next round of inventory? Because for a physical product business, that's the question. You're constantly cycling cash into product, waiting for it to convert back, and cycling it again. And as you grow, the cycle gets bigger, which is why growth can actually feel worse before it feels better. Because more sales means more inventory, means more cash tied up at any given time. So it took me a while to really feel that in my bones and not just understand it conceptually, but actually feel the rhythm of it and plan around it. I also want to say something about the emotional side of this because I think it matters. When you see a revenue number that looks good and your bank account doesn't match, it's really easy to spiral, to feel like something is wrong, or feeling like the business isn't working, like you're doing something incorrectly. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes there is a real problem, but sometimes the gap is just timing. So knowing the difference between those two things is what keeps you from making reactive decisions based on fear instead of data. Now, the question I ask myself now when my cash feels tight, is this a timing problem or a margin problem? If it's timing, inventory is in transit, orders are processing, cash is coming back, I stay patient. If it's margin, I'm not making enough on what I'm selling, that requires a different response entirely. That question has saved me from a lot of unnecessary stress. Okay, so the short version. Revenue is not profit, profit is not cash, and the gap between what you make and what you keep is where most early founders get surprised. Know your margin per product, understand your cash timing, and when the numbers feel off, ask yourself whether it's a timing issue or a real one before you do anything. I hope this was helpful. If you're building something and this has resonated, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Please subscribe if you want to follow along, and there's so much more coming. I genuinely can't wait to share it with you. So talk soon, and thank you so much for watching.